So the year 2020 has given us a multitude of things to talk about. We started the year off with the possibility of a World War III, went straight into coronavirus, freaking aliens, and now discoveries of a parallel universe. And I think this next one is a result of that discovery because HBO Max will be giving us Zack Snyder's version of the Justice League in the year 2021. So yes, everyone, welcome to the year when you're going to have to add yet another topic to avoid at the dinner table during Thanksgiving. Just to reiterate, those topics are stay away from politics, religion, and now thoughts on comic book movies. Those arguments get heated. Hey everyone, welcome to the Movie Bus Podcast. I am your host, Steven Campos, and here with me today, adding to his fantastic streak as fact checker, and now also newly assigned as co-host, David.
It's good to be back, Steven.
Good to have you back, David. Also joining us on the show, please welcome my old friend from high school, Will Jones.
Hello, everybody. I'm back again.
And also joining us on this episode is another old friend from high school named Alexis.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Steven, for having me.
Thanks for joining, man. Will and Alexis are two friends who I think probably are two of the few people who know as much about comic books and comic book movies as much as I do. David knows a lot too, but it's really hard to find those people who can geek out with you and where you can agree on some levels. However, let's see if we're going to get into some heated arguments or discussions today because, again, we are discussing the Snyder Cut. So for those of you who don't know, which I'm sure everyone does know this information already, the Snyder Cut is a movement that started by fans of the DC Extended Universe shortly after the theatrical release of Justice League in 2017. Ever since then, it has gotten a multitude of attention. Lots of fans have been using the hashtag #ReleaseTheSnyderCut, as well as some of the original cast members such as Gal Gadot, Ben Affleck, and Jason Momoa have been huge advocates for this to be released. And now, for those fans who want the Snyder Cut to be released, it seems like your prayers have been answered. Because, as mentioned before, HBO Max is releasing it. So, we're going to start off this discussion by just asking you guys real quick, what are your first initial thoughts on this? Are you excited? What do you think? What's going on? Anyone can answer this.
All right, I'm going to jump in on this.
All right, well, take the wheel.
Oh, yeah. So, when Justice League came out, I thought it was an okay film, and when I heard it wasn't Zack Snyder's version, all I could think about, we're probably going to get another Superman versus Batman, Batman v Superman. We're just going to get another film like that. And that film, I liked it, and that's because I love basically rock and sock and robot movies. It's just a beat 'em up movie. And that's why I feel they're going to go with Justice League, is that it's just going to be a beat it up movie. And so I think we're just going to get another Superman versus Batman level of a film coming out with Zack Snyder's cut of it.
That's a very interesting take on that. So just to make sure I got everything clear, you think it's just going to be like little tiny additions to it? It's not going to make that much of a difference from the theatrical release?
When it comes to a lot of the main points, no. I don't think it's going to be it's not going to be a completely different film. I believe it's going to have the same direction. It's just going to have different action. It's going to have different plot development. But when it comes to the direction of how the film goes and the end goal of the whole film, I believe it's going to be very, very similar.
That's interesting. All right, Alexis, do you have anything to add to that?
I'm actually very interested in this release. It's a separate cut, and if they're making such a huge release out of it, then they must have taken a lot out of the film and just changed a lot from Snyder's direction on the film. So I'm actually very interested to see how much of the cut there is.
See, I think it's safe to say that everyone here, well, on the Movie Buffs podcast today, I think it's safe to say everyone here is interested in viewing it. Like, I don't think anyone is upset in the sense where we're not going to watch this when it's out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. David, do you have anything?
Anything? I have a lot of things in my mind. I'm just trying to gather everything about the Snyder Cut.
Let's just keep it at initial thoughts, and then we'll dig into details.
When I first heard the news, I was really excited. I was never an advocate for the Snyder Cut, but now that we're gonna get it, it's gonna be pretty cool to see what it is and what that means for the future of comic book movies as well.
I don't know. I feel okay. Like I said earlier, I think that we're all interested to see what's going to be released and how Zack Snyder's going to put this together, along with the rest of the Warner Brothers team or the rest of the crew that's working on this film. But with that said, I think this is being blown out of proportion. Too much hype is being put into this film, into this specific release. I think it's just gonna be almost the identical movie that we got back in 2017 with a couple additions to it. I think it's no different than when a film releases the uncut version or the extended version, director's cut, whatever you want to call it, on a separate disc when you buy the Blu-ray. It's no different than that. And my reasoning for that is when I heard this news about Zack Snyder's Justice League coming out, I immediately went to YouTube and I watched the first trailer of the Justice League, which I believe when the first trailer came out, Zack Snyder had not left the project yet. Watching that trailer, I do agree with the fans. There was some scenes, and there are multitudes of little differences. Like for example, the color schemes are different, and there are some scenes that don't come out in the actual film. But in the end, it still felt very much the same. The tone felt the same, and it looked like the story wasn't going to be any different. It looks like we're still going to get the exact same story. So if there are people out there who are hoping that Zack Snyder's Justice League is going to have a different ending or take a different route, treat these characters differently, I think those people are going to be disappointed because if anything, it's just going to be like deleted scenes and little extras that are going to be implemented into what we already have. So with that said, I do think this is being blown out of proportion, but that's my thoughts on this.
I'd like to chirp in that I think it's this Snyder cut, depending on how it's received, because I think on most of our opinions on Batman versus Superman, I personally believe it was not a very well-received movie. And Snyder's cut, I think it would dictate whether he has a second chance at DC in the future with more bigger projects, or if he's run his course with hero movies.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think the Snyder cut, I'd like to talk about Justice League. I think the issue is that it doesn't have a lot of genuine moments like Marvel does. And the one scene I'm thinking about right now is when Aquaman goes on a rant right before they go into battle, and he's accidentally sitting on the lasso of truth. And that is honestly probably the most genuine moment in the movie. It's funny. It shows a lot about his character, because he wouldn't have said it if he wasn't on the lasso. So you know his thick-skinned, but because he was on the lasso, it showed that he was pretty soft. He's a big softy inside. So if the Snyder cut has more moments like that really develop these characters and their relationships, I think Snyder in the future for more DC films is the right way to go.
Now, I'm sorry to intervene here, Steven. When you say the future of DC films, do you mean like the future of the DCEU, or just like the solo projects they've been doing, like with Joker or something like that?
I think for any project that he's going to receive.
That's interesting. I'm going to comment on what you were talking about with that genuine scene when Aquaman was sitting on the lasso of truth. I know that it has never been confirmed where Joss Whedon stepped in, and where where Zack Snyder left the project and where Joss Whedon stepped in. Personally, to me, that scene, it's very interesting that you brought that specific scene up because I was going to as well. That scene, along with the scene when Superman comes back and, the Flash is trying to run past him and Superman catches him, it's a very comedic moment. To me, that feels very much like Joss Whedon. To me, that doesn't feel like Zack Snyder. And my concern here is that a lot of people are blaming Joss Whedon and saying that he ruined Justice League, when if you look back at the comments, like if you YouTube that specific scene where Aquaman's sitting on the lasso of truth, or the fighting sequence between the Justice League and Superman, a lot of people are commenting, oh, this was the best scene of the movie. Oh, this scene right here made the movie for me. And I really do feel that that was Joss Whedon. So I don't know, what do you guys think? Do you think there's a type of misconception going on here, or confusion on who directed what? Because personally for me, I'm going to say it, and I'm sorry if there's anyone who's going to hate me for this, I think Joss Whedon made the film better.
The thing about the whole Zack Snyder and Joss Whedon and how the movie is made, Justice League, I think the main reason why it flopped is because the characters did not have the build they needed, right? When that moment with Aquaman, that built his character in literally, I think, 3 minutes of film time. It built his character. We needed more stuff like that for the film. And that's the only reason why I feel like Justice League never made great film. But like, if that was Joss Whedon, then he killed it, because he pretty much made the possibility of making group films without the build-up, like how Marvel needed for the Avengers, of having 5 films, 6 films, 8 films, 12 films before the Avengers film. You already know these characters. You already bonded with these characters. With Justice League, you've not bonded with any of the characters, because either one's a billionaire, one's superhuman, and well, not superhuman, Kryptonian, and a lot of people can't bond with that. Man of Steel had a lot of bonding, but not big execution. Zack Snyder doesn't really build the characters as much until all we get is the storyline. So if Joss Whedon's the one building up these characters in the short amount of time, then Joss Whedon is what's going to make the hero movies better. So yeah, I believe that if Joss Whedon made that, then he made Justice League better.
Yeah, but I think the confusion here is, or I think the problem is that we don't really know what it was that Joss Whedon directed and what was Zack Snyder's. The reason why I bring up those two scenes specifically is because the chemistry between the characters was very evident there. You know, you can see it, and you sort of got a sense of who each character was in that small amount, which is very Joss Whedon, because if we're looking at scenes from the Avengers or Age of Ultron, specifically the dinner party, not the dinner party scene, what's that, house party
The
scene?
party scene in the beginning, yeah.
Party scene in the beginning in Age of Ultron, where they're all sitting around trying to lift Thor's hammer. They're quipping jokes at each other, and yet, even though they're just, you know, joking around with each other, you kind of get a sense of each one of their personalities. And that, I feel, is what translated into this Justice League movie that we got in 2017. And if that's the case, and you're going to take that out and replace it with what Zack Snyder had, I feel we're just going to be in for a more serious, darker movie, which is what everyone complained about when Batman vs. Superman came out. So who's, you know, what are we arguing here with these hardcore Snyder fans?
Just to make it clear, we've all established that we all want to see the Snyder Cut.
Yeah, we do want to see it.
Yeah.
We're interested. We're not saying that, you know, we're not hating, and we're not saying this is a failure. Like, I know there are a lot of people who want to cancel it. I'm not saying cancel it. I'm just trying to dig into why. Like,
What?
why are we releasing this, and why is it so important?
So do you believe, because you went on earlier saying that Joss Whedon is what you believe made that movie better. So
Yes.
Is there a part of you that thinks the Snyder Cut will be a little bit worse? Or a little worse? However amount of worse you think it will be.
Okay.
I think if it's gonna come out just like Batman vs. Superman, then yes, I feel like the film's gonna be worse.
Which would be terrible, because then you have this whole fan base who's probably going to say they like it anyways because they worked so hard, you know, people even got billboards, I forgot where, and just to have that be the ultimate flop, like, there's a lot of pressure here on the Snyder Cut, you know, for a movie that may not be that good, because I also believe the same thing you said, Steven, that Joss Whedon, with his awesome, I don't even know, his dialogue that he has between these characters is what made that movie a little enjoyable.
Personally, for me, so I'm gonna make my stance on this clear right from the start. So I'm interested in seeing how this is put together. I will watch it when it comes out, but I feel it's unnecessary. And for those who are excited of it coming out, I just want to know why, because it is being blown up. Like, there's this new hashtag, like, we won Snyder Cut. When, like, you know, there's director's cuts for a lot of movies already. Like, just to name a few at the top of my head, Taken has an extended cut that came out with a Blu-ray. Doctor Sleep recently. There's a 3 Alien. You know, so there's all these director's cuts out there already. So, yeah, that's my thing. I think it's unnecessary, and I just want to know what's the big hype about it. Because personally, my thoughts, like I said, I think it's just going to be a couple additional scenes.
I don't think they would call it Zack Snyder's Justice League if you just add additional scenes, because then that's not really his.
Well, yeah, but the cast isn't even coming back for reshoots.
That's when I lost
Um,
interest.
I'm
what
sorry.
they talk
Go
about,
ahead.
if it was Jason Momoa or with Henry Cavill, when they were talking about when the change of directors and stuff, they took out almost 3 hours of filming. We could have almost a 4-hour different film. Because Zack Snyder apparently finished the film, and Joss Whedon stepped in, did some more scenes, and then that's when he changed most of it. I don't remember which interview it was, but I think it was Henry Cavill, and he said, yeah, that we finished the film, then we all had to come back to cast more scenes differently and stuff like that. I think Zack Snyder had almost, like I said, maybe 3 hours of filming done for that was taken out. Now, at least probably like an hour and a half or 2 hours taken out from the film. It's not itty-bitty scenes. It's not 5 minutes here or there. I think it's a lot.
Okay, well, I didn't know that they had already filmed almost 3 hours worth of film. So that
Yeah,
is...
I think it was in one interview way back. I think they were talking about the mustache, and then they brought up the change of directors, the difficulties. Like, yeah, we did a lot of scenes. We finished almost all of it, and then 2 months later, we all had to come back with Josh to do more scenes. I don't remember which interview it was. I just remember seeing it and I was like, damn, they really effed up Zack Snyder in this time. And I'm like, did Zack mess up or something? But it was just a small moment. He talked about it for like 30 seconds.
I don't know if this information is already out there, but do you think what Zack Snyder had, is it going to be a completely different story, or are we just going to get the same thing handled differently?
We just fact checked something.
So, Zack Snyder stepped down from the film because his daughter had passed.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so
I believe that's the reason why he stepped down, yes.
I can confirm this, yes.
Personally, I'm sorry, Steven, could you repeat your question?
Do you think that what we're getting, the Snyder Cut that will be released on HBO Max, do you think it'll be something completely different story-wise, or do you think we're going to get essentially the same story just handled in a different, darker, or even more serious way?
Yeah, I think I said that earlier. Like, we're going to get the same direction of film. We're just going to have a different execution of it, I believe. The same direction. We're going to still have the exact same moment. A lot of the scenes are probably going to be the exact same. But we'll probably have different fights. We'll probably have an extended version of Superman versus the Justice League. We'll probably see more between Superman and Flash, because they only had legitimately 2 moments in the film. And one of them was a post-credit scene. So I believe... Actually, it wasn't post-credit. It was a truck scene, but I still think that if we get more scenes between characters, Superman, Flash, Batman, and Superman, Wonder Woman, and Flash, like, we have more characters talking to each other, it builds the plot better. And yeah, I believe it's going to be a little bit more worth it, so we can at least bond with the friendships they make.
So do you think okay, so one of the scenes, Stephen, that you said you can almost confirm is Joss Whedon.
Almost. It's not confirmed anywhere. But...
Yeah, you can't fact check that. I'm sorry, I tried. Is the scene where Aquaman's sitting on the lasso of truth, correct?
Yes.
So that being said, are they going to take out some of Joss Whedon's scenes from this movie, like just completely wipe it out, or would they just keep a few?
No, yeah, definitely. Oh, go ahead, Will.
Get rid of all of it. We're not going to get any Joss Whedon in this. Any scene he directed, I don't think it's going to be there. Any of it.
I agree with Will. Yeah.
So then that could almost be like a determination of the first Justice League of who directed what.
Like, the way I know that Justice League is pretty much done, because they're saying it's Zack Snyder's cut that's coming out. They finished that film. Joss Whedon stepped in, and how I know is that nobody came back to create more scenes. That means they're using nothing but cuts. So there had to be a Zack Snyder version of the film done already that nobody got. And Joss Whedon tore that completed project to suit his own. So I believe we might get probably an hour of film that Joss Whedon has in that movie gone. Completely gone. An hour worth of it. Completely gone.
I think... See, here's the troubling part that I start thinking about. just because it was cut out and handled by someone else who wasn't the originator of the vision for Justice League doesn't mean that it's bad. I mean, a lot of people are expecting this Snyder Cut to be epic and, better, and, people are expecting to watch and be like, yes, this is the Justice League I wanted. But what if it's not? Like, there's a huge possibility for that because, like we mentioned earlier, Zack Snyder's track record on the DCEU is not the best. His vision of the Justice League was literally Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, and then jumping into Justice League. And I feel the reason why he had this huge urge to rush this, and I think for me personally, that was the main problem of the 2017 theatrical version of Justice League, is that everything felt too rushed. And I think the reason for that is because they're trying to compete with Marvel. Like, oh, Marvel came out with the Avengers. Okay, we're going to do Justice League now. Oh, they took all this time to set up their characters. Well, we don't have time because these people are making a lot of money. We want to do the same thing, so let's just put this out there. So, regardless of if Joss Whedon touched Justice League or not, Zack Snyder's vision doesn't change from being Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, and Justice League. Which, personally for me, this is my issue here. Even if we do get the Snyder Cut and it is significantly different, I fear it's still going to feel really rushed for a majority of the team members' characters.
I'd like to add that I don't believe it's a mistake that they're trying to compete with Marvel, because competition just drives everything. And because they want to aim to try to beat Marvel, that opens the gates to a lot of funding. I believe Justice League had a budget of $300 million. And that's, I mean, you should be, with that kind of money, it should be an amazing film. Just the execution was poor.
Yeah.
So I think that their decision to try to compete with Marvel is a good one, but just their execution to compete with them is just the way they're doing it. It's just poor. Treating it as a race to get to where Marvel is right now in just 5 years is just not possible. I believe that's why Wonder Woman film was so well received, because it's just about her. You have this rebooted Batman from completely different from The Dark Knight, which was so loved by everyone, and this Superman versus Batman and this Justice League, this Batman hasn't had any time to grow on anyone.
Yeah, that's true. And again, Zack Snyder, though, I mean, I'm like you said, I'm praising him for trying to compete with Marvel, because competition does open the door to greatness, because you see someone doing something and you want to compete with them and show them that you can do it better. So that's totally fine. So I'm rooting for a great Justice League movie. I'm not against it. I'm rooting for it. But it also concerns me because when someone is passionate about a project, it's evident in their work. For example, Kevin Feige, you can tell that there's passion behind every single Marvel film that he's involved in. And Zack Snyder, he didn't even he wasn't an advocate for release the Snyder Cut. This was literally HBO contacting him and saying like, hey, this is making noise. We kind of need money for our subscription service. Do you want to do it? And then he's like, sure. But, if someone who had a true passion, like, no, this was not the movie I wanted, I have a passion to give these fans my vision, it's my dream, I think he would have pushed for it a little bit more.
So I'd like to put, I'm a little bit cynical, like what you said earlier on why the Snyder Cut's coming out now. I'm a big cynic on it. I believe it's coming out because of the whole pandemic. A lot of services, theaters are not making money. These films aren't making money. They have all this raw film from Snyder. They might as well make some money out of it. So I believe that's why they're releasing the Snyder Cut.
It's actually really crazy to think about that the only reason we might be getting the Snyder Cut is because of COVID-19.
Yep.
Well, something good has to come out of it.
Something. We need something.
I'd like a question for the whole group. What do you want to see in the Snyder Cut?
A good movie.
One thing you wished that Justice League did better. Are you looking for them to do it exactly how you wanted it to be better, or are you hoping that they just change that scene completely in the Snyder Cut?
All right, Alexis, do you have any thoughts about that?
That was my question, homie.
Oh, I'm sorry.
David still hasn't learned to distinguish your guys' voices.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
He's new, don't worry.
Yeah.
We have similar voices. We get that all since middle school. Yeah, I have it all the time.
Don't worry.
Like I said it earlier, I want the friendships that bonds the characters. I want more moments. I want more Superman Flash. You know what? I just completely forgot Cyborg's in that film. I just thought about it, like, oh, who's part of the Justice League? I just remembered Cyborg's there. Cyborg doesn't get huge pivotal moments. He got some moments, but when it came to it, the gist of it is, to me, it was Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and Flash. Superman barely showed up. He showed up to be revived, dipped, saw his girlfriend, and then pretty much, like I was saying, if we could have more moments to build separate friendships, I want to see Batman and Cyborg get along. I want to see Wonder Woman and Flash have their moment. Like Wonder Woman is pretty beast. She can probably like maybe not keep up with Flash to like the full potential, but I want to see a moment where like Flash tries to run past her and Wonder Woman catches him. That moment would be sick as hell. That would build up Wonder Woman like that. She's a boss, and so like I need moments like that. I need to see like Bat putting like Wayne tag inside Cyborg and Cyborg becoming some super beast ass cyber dude. Like stuff like this would be fantastic if they built up different bonds and not just throw a bunch, like not Suicide Squad, where it's just a bunch of randos coming out together and saving the day.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I do, and again, this is my opinion because it can't be confirmed. I agree with Will, everything that he's saying about the bonding between the characters, and I think we got that. But then again, I feel like that was Joss Whedon. So without Joss Whedon, I don't think we're gonna get that. Honestly,
I'm pretty sure Zack Snyder must have added like one scene with let's just say Batman and Flash. Actually, that might have been Joss Whedon. That does seem like a Joss Whedon thing.
I think that was Batman vs Superman. I don't even think that was Justice League pretty much.
Yeah.
Like that moment where it's Flashpoint pretty much happened.
Basically.
Flash is running through time, runs up to Bruce Wayne, and like that moment, that's Zack Snyder. And that moment, probably a smaller part of it is in Justice League. That probably was Zack Snyder. But the comedy sense that whole moment had, I'm pretty sure that was Joss Whedon.
Yeah.
I'm sure of it, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that anything comedy in Justice League was Joss Whedon, because given Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman, there was very, very little to no comedy in those movies. So I don't think Zack Snyder's the very comedic type. And for the jokes, this is gonna sound messed up, but for the jokes in Justice League that didn't land, I feel maybe that was Zack Snyder trying to lighten up a bit after the negative feedback about Batman vs Superman being too dark.
I kind of just want to like to counter that. I actually think that's still Joss Whedon, and I think the only reason why it could be Joss Whedon is because he's using comedy that would work if he had time to build those characters through separate movies. He's trying to make jokes like he was making an Avengers film. Those jokes in Avengers, 90% of them landed because we've built a bond with every one of those characters. He's making in the Justice League, we're making jokes that we don't really bond with.
Yes, and okay, so this is gonna sound like I'm contradicting myself a little bit, but I do feel this is something I have to say. While I did enjoy the jokes in Justice League, Joss Whedon's version, I don't think you need jokes to make a dynamic fun.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that point, you're just being exactly like Marvel. Because Marvel's known for, it's sort of like a roller coaster. Serious build-up, and then comedic relief. Serious build-up, comedic relief. And if you're doing that with the DC characters, it doesn't work like that. Not all heroes have to be like the Avengers heroes, where Tony Stark, all these quips, very snarky. Batman doesn't need to be that. And I feel like that's something Joss Whedon kind of got mixed up with. He tried to bring some of those personalities from the Avengers into the Justice League.
Well, I think the biggest issue with Justice League is, like you said earlier, we don't know how much Joss Whedon directed, and he had to pick up from Batman vs Superman because it's coming from that movie, and Zack Snyder. That movie was so serious. When you see a lot of the comedy in Justice League from Batman, it's completely out of character, and that's the issue. And what I'm hoping to see in the Snyder cut is how he treated Batman. Because in the first movie, we have this broken bat who's branding people. He just hates anything he doesn't know about. And that's why he's so hateful towards Superman. That's why he wants to destroy him. But in the Justice League, he discovers the Flash, and their first interaction, Flash and Batman, in their comics, they're the best duo ever. I love the witty banter between them. And the minute Batman and Flash meet, it's like he's just acting like, oh, it's a funny little power you have there. Are you super fast? And then the Flash just has some witty. It's a dumb remark.
No, yeah, I see what you mean there, and that dynamic, I feel, was represented correctly. It was given justice, but I do.
Justice.
I don't know.
That was good. That was good. You
Thank
got
you,
me.
thank
But I do feel there should be more of Ezra Miller. So I guess
Oh, yeah.
this has been my long answer to Alexis's question. But I would like to see more of Ezra Miller specifically in Snyder Cut of Justice League.
Oh yeah, definitely. He's a great actor in what I've seen him in.
I'll bring this point up. When you said you really liked the scene when Superman comes back to life, and that little comedy where the Flash is trying to run away from him and he gets knocked down.
Yes.
Personally, that whole scene, I absolutely hate. They treated Superman like they just used the Lazarus pit on him. He came back full of hate, full of anger, full of revenge. If he was brought back to life regeneratively with his own pool, I believe he should have been acting more as he didn't know what was going on and lashing out just generally in every direction. But he just came back with I don't know if I can say the term, but with like a hate boner for Batman. And with weird dialogue too. The whole scene is just. But when I think about the Flash interaction in that scene, it's perfect because Justice League is the first movie we're seeing the Flash in. Mm-hmm. And in that scene, it kind of looks like the Flash still doesn't have his powers down yet. And that's a perfect way to segue into a Flash movie because he'll learn how to use his powers.
I think they tried to make Flash a little too much like Spider-Man in that movie, though.
That's true.
It's like that. I think he just he just had me remember why the Flash is butchered in this film. They have him tripping over himself, like his shoes are untied. Like they really have like two scenes where the Flash tripped over himself, and what the heck? What?
Yeah, like what kind of reaction?
That was Joss Whedon. I'm really hoping that was Joss Whedon because I feel like Zack Snyder would have had Flash freaking blowing through people.
Well, there is that one cool scene that a lot of fans were disappointed wasn't in the film. It's Flash going through like a panel of glass or something. Like he just shatters it by putting his finger through because he's so quick. I guess it creates this effect.
Oh yeah, he vibrated the glass.
Yeah. So I feel like that. I think it's confirmed that is Zack Snyder, but going with what David was saying, if this is, going with what Alexis was saying, if this is the Flash learning how to use his powers, that will be a great segment into what could be a standalone Flash movie. And I do like well, David's right. They did make him a little bit too much like Spider-Man. I do love the dynamic where there's different personalities within the team. The only issue here is that it seems like they're all trying to be funny. Like, Batman cracked jokes in these movies. That's just a no.
Bad Batman.
Especially after watching Batman vs. Superman, to see him quipping these jokes is just, yeah.
Like, the whole thing where he's on the floor and he's like, yeah, something's definitely bleeding. Like, no.
I think me and Will were discussing this a little bit earlier. Batman's character is not really a comedic one-liner guy. He's more of a sarcastic reply guy. And I think that's one of my biggest gripes with the Batman in the Justice League is his like quick one-liners that are just like bland. Where the Batman, what I've read, is his responses when he's usually in the Justice League or part of a team, they're sarcastic, quick.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. It's out of character, but then again, we're talking about a franchise where Batman's starting to use guns and apparently he kills people now. So,
if I'm not wrong, to go back on that Flash thing, because I've been fixed on that since it's been mentioned, isn't Ezra Miller planning to do like a live-action Flashpoint movie?
Yo,
if he's gonna be choking people, I don't think it's gonna be a lot.
That's true. If Ezra Miller even still has a job as Flash.
That's true. Yeah.
But you know what? Everyone just kind of forgot about that, so I think they're gonna
Well,
forgive him
with
for
with
that.
the Flash, I think okay. While I do think Ezra Miller did great as the Flash, he's not irreplaceable, especially with a character like Flash, where he introduces different timelines and everything. So we can totally just get the CW actor in the
Ooh,
movie.
I don't know.
Well, they had Ezra Miller and the guy from CW meet up in the Crisis on Infinite TV series.
Exactly.
did,
There you
yeah.
go.
Just have them switch. Have Ezra Miller be in the CW.
So it's possible. I mean, I think it's just like, oh, this is a different timeline, and this is how he looked like in this timeline.
That's a perfect way, actually. If the I think it's Warner Brothers, right? If they want to
Yeah.
get rid of Ezra Miller because of him assaulting a fan, that'd be a good way to.
That
Get him
sentence
out.
is just like for him assaulting a fan.
Well, yeah, you want to fight?
He should have just gone back in time and stopped that whole thing. I mean, I don't know what he was thinking.
That's Flashpoint all over again.
Right, there you go.
That's Flashpoint all over
You
again.
just released leaked
There
plot
you
for
go.
the Flashpoint movie.
So I'd like to also hit on what you said earlier about Batman using guns to shoot people. We do have, we have a variety of different Batmans to choose from and different Supermans. We have all these different comics, but I feel with the Justice League, they're trying to just take source material from different varieties of Batmans and throw them into one movie, which doesn't work. Like, you have to have your characters do linear stuff. Like in Guardians of the Galaxy, all these characters, whatever they do, their one-liners, their jokes, their battles, it's all something you can see them doing.
Yeah, it's consistent with their character.
But with Justice League, you have Diana. Diana's probably the most linear one there. Well, you have Batman going from serious to joking. You have Ezra Miller. That's not really. He has no foundation in the whole movie. He just, I don't know why he's there. Cyborg, unfortunately, has nothing developed in the movie either. At the end of the day, he just does one thing, and that's stop the
Boombox?
boombox. Yeah, he just stops that, and that's literally his whole purpose in the movie. That's why they introduced him. I feel like they could have gone with a different villain.
Then Steppenwolf.
Yeah,
Who would you have gotten to be the villain?
I don't think I honestly would have had a villain in the first movie. The first movie is jam-packed with a lot of things. I feel like they could have built up to a real villain in the second movie. But they have to go get Aquaman. They have to find Flash. Cyborg joins up. They have to revive Superman. And then it's just so many plot points. And if you rewatch the movie, it's just a bunch of cuts. When you watch Marvel movies or Wonder Woman, the storyline just flows. In this Justice League, there's just a bunch of cuts everywhere. It's just one of those movies where they're there where they need to be.
And I think that's a strong result from the fact that this movie is too rushed. They needed to take their time setting these characters up with a couple more solo movies. But like, if we think about it, one of the essential, I think it's okay for everyone to, we all agree here, Batman is a very important character to the Justice League, yet there's no solo movie for him before the Justice League even came out.
Well, Batman v Superman was supposed to be a solo film for him. It's more of a Batman movie than a Superman movie.
They probably have like a bingo wheel and they're picking big events in the DC universe and just go, oh, Batman versus Superman, I guess we'll make that movie first. But it doesn't work like that. You have to have a reason for these big things. Like, honestly, I'm not a Marvel fan, but I watched all the Marvel movies. And when I did not know Thanos was a thing, when he showed up, I was like, what the heck? And I messaged William because he's the Marvel guy, and he just ran me through everything. I was like, whoa, this release is insane. I love this shit so much. Sorry for the curse. But, like, Batman vs. Superman, I believe there's 2 comics on it. One by Frank Miller, and I don't know the other one. But that comic is just insane. And I love it's one of the most highly rated comics ever released. And you can't just pick a comic that has like such a high rating and say, hey, we're going to make a movie out of it. You have to have characters and then make a movie out of a certain comic line.
I agree with that. As a comic book writer myself, I don't have anything published, so don't ask. I'm an aspiring comic book writer.
So don't ask.
Okay.
I strongly believe so. I'm sorry. So as a creator, I believe that if you establish characters that are relatable and your audience is able to love them or care for them, it doesn't matter what they do or what situation you put them in, they're going to enjoy watching them because they enjoy the character. So I do believe it's character before story. And Justice League and Batman vs Superman, I feel, just took what I just said and did the opposite.
I agree. They put the story before plot.
Yes.
Wait, no, I'm sorry. Story before character.
Story before character.
I could bring up the Marvel series, the whole Infinity Gauntlet era. Before that was becoming a thing, like when you had the solo movies, you had Thor, you had Iron Man, you had Captain America. How many people were invested into Marvel movies? I want to say that, like right now, Marvel movies, everyone is into them. The majority of people are into them, right?
Yeah, I think that's
But before, you have these solo movies that build up to those big, like Age of Ultron, Infinity War. You have those movies, and you get people. Wow, this movie's really big. Everyone's talking about it because you have the Captain America fan base talking like, oh man, hey, Captain America and Iron Man, they're teaming up and stuff. And Avengers, the first movie, you have more collective people talking about it, which in turn makes even more people talk about it. And then those people can go back and watch the first movies again, and then they get the hype for the new Avengers movies or the Guardians of the Galaxy. So that's like, they have those big, giant movies, but they still have smaller movies leading up to it. And that's why Marvel, I believe, is doing so well.
Yes, I agree with you, but I think also within those solo movies, Marvel's very being intricate and detailed with caring for the characters, and as a result, that's why their bigger movies like Infinity War and Avengers blow up because they show you the character and then like, oh, you love this character from this solo movie, you love this character from this solo movie. Well, guess what? They're coming together, and that's when people lose their minds. And with DC, I really think it's just a lack of planning, not direction, because Zack Snyder, well, I don't think he's the best director, but he does have awesome visual concept art and everything. So like some of the shots within his movies are beautiful. I think he just needs a better sense of direction because you're dealing with Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. Those three characters are so iconic and so like lots of love for them throughout decades of comic book history. It's not hard to make a good movie about them, you know?
No, I get what you mean because when Infinity War was about to release, I just kept thinking of all the possible character interactions. Like, dude, imagine if Rocket met Spider-Man. Like, how crazy would that be? Or if Tony Stark met Peter Quill, like, how would that interaction go? And that's how you know that there's good characters in these stories.
Also, who the heck knew about Guardians before 2014?
I didn't, for
Yet
sure.
the MCU managed to get you to cry for a tree.
Hey, he's super cute, man.
And I look, for listeners who are annoyed that we keep comparing to Marvel, we apologize, but I think Marvel and DC have been compared even way before the MCU. These are the two biggest superhero comic book companies in the world.
Oh, yeah.
So comparisons are bound to happen. I mean, in any conversation.
I think comparisons are fully justifiable because $300 million was dumped into this movie. You can't just by itself, if you have just nothing else to base it off of, like, you're just going to walk out of the movie just like as another movie. So I think it's perfectly justifiable to use comparisons to other movies. And I actually like comparing Batman versus Superman and Justice League towards The Dark Knight. Because The Dark Knight, I'll rewatch that movie at least 3 times every year. The Batman versus Superman, I'll probably watch the fight. Just the fight, not even the movie. Just the fight itself. Once a year, maybe. Just because I want to, watch Batman punch Superman down on the ground. That's fun to watch. But it's not a movie I like to go back to. Marvel has some great movies that I like to go back to. And the thing is, I'm not a Marvel fanboy, but I like rewatching some Marvel movies. And that's what I want from DC. So whatever Marvel is doing, DC should at least take some of it. So, I mean, because I want to be able to rewatch some DC movies. Like heck yeah, this I love rewatching this. But the point it is right now, there isn't. I've rewatched Wonder Woman because that was a really well built movie.
I agree. Well, I know that we said earlier that competition is good, but at the same time, I feel that competition does get in the way because it did not get in the way, but
It alters.
not alters. I feel like when DC is trying to be Marvel, that's when they fail. And when they let go of that goal and just tell themselves, we're going to do our own thing, that's when their true movies start to shine. And I'm looking specifically at Joker and Shazam. Those two films, I feel, were not trying to copy Marvel whatsoever. And personally, I think those are the two best films DC has made in the last decade. Well, other than The Dark Knight, of course.
Oh yeah, let me. Okay.
I'm gonna step in real quick. Joker, fantastic film. Love that movie. That movie killed it. Shazam, I'm highly disappointed with that film.
Whoa.
Wait, before you answer that question, before you say why, I want to try to take a guess. Is it because when he was like, Shazam as an adult, because he wasn't
Serious?
he wasn't serious like he was like in the comic books or like in the past animated film adaptations?
Yeah, they basically turned Shazam into a giant joke character with superpowers. That's what they did.
I'm gonna interject, and I'm gonna be honest. When the Shazam trailer first came out, I already hated it. I did not want to watch it, but I did watch it when it came out, and I absolutely loved it. The direction they took with because Shazam's a kid, the new Shazam, he's just a kid, and I understand. It's just the development of his character, of Billy Batson, is just so well.
Yeah, and I think you can't take a movie where a kid turns into a man by saying Shazam and take it seriously, I think comedy needs to be there in order to sell it to the audience.
Does it?
And the Shazam movie, thinking back about it now, I don't think it took anything from the new Marvel or from DC, but it did remind me of Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi version.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the Sam Raimi's movies were just great. I don't know why people don't like Spider-Man 3. They're just a joy to watch, and Shazam is just a joy to watch.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, and I think it's interesting that you compare them because those two are obviously superhero films, Spider-Man and Shazam, but they're both directed by directors their main genre is horror. So Sam Raimi, obviously made
House of the Dead, I believe, or Evil Dead. Yeah, my bad. Sorry.
Evil Dead, Drag Me to Hell, movies like that. And then the director for Shazam, he's the creator and director of the short film that later became an actual film, Lights Out.
It should have stayed a short film, honestly. But besides that, yeah, no, I think what you said about competition, I don't think it's the competition. I'd have to disagree. The competition is not the spat; it's the money. I feel like they see Marvel with these giant movies are making so much money, but they're choosing to ignore all the smaller movies. And they want to make this giant movie with Batman vs. Superman, two of the biggest names. Yeah, it's two of the biggest names. People who don't read comics, hey, you know what? Batman vs. Superman, I want to see that too. That will bring people in. But there's a right way to do it and the wrong way to do it. And just using the name to try to sell your movie is just not going to work.
Yeah, I totally agree. Circling this back to the Snyder Cut real quick, just because I do have a question, and this is for the group, so you guys can all answer in whatever order you guys want. I've been reading some articles, and I slightly agree with this, but and I'm going to quote the headline here, saying that the Snyder Cut is a dog whistle for toxic fans and could potentially ruin cinema or Hollywood movies, blockbusters in the future. And I slightly agree with that because to me it feels... Okay, so looking at what the Snyder Cut is, I feel a part of me does want to say that it's this fan base that just doesn't want to accept that a movie they were looking forward to was disappointing to them. And now that, they started this movement and Warner Brothers is giving them what they want, I fear that for every single movie that turns out to be a disappointment, they're just going to have a backup movie that they'll sell you later. And I don't think that's right for Hollywood to do. For example, already this information hasn't even been out for a complete week yet, and we're already getting people demanding the Ayer cut for Suicide Squad. We're getting people demanding, well, not people, but the director herself is demanding a extended version of the 2016 Ghostbusters, and
Which is uncalled for. No fan is like, you know what? I need to enjoy 2016
yeah, but like,
Ghostbusters.
do you see the gate that this is opening? And
Well, I'm gonna have to disagree with
what
you.
are your thoughts on that? Yeah, go
I
ahead.
don't think this is gonna, like you said, ruin cinema or these big blockbuster movies. Because I have a feeling that the big reason these fans were hashtag release the Snyder Cut is because he himself had to step down and someone else took over. Some movies like Suicide Squad were bad not because the director left, but because the studio, was cutting back. So that is more or less, which may be more or less, of David Ayer's vision of the Suicide Squad. Zack Snyder just didn't get the chance to even be ripped off by Warner Brothers. He literally had to leave because of the tragedy that happened. So I only believe we're getting the Snyder Cut because he was robbed of making his Justice League movie.
I agree that it is toxic, but for a different reason. And I think it's something Steven said earlier. Regardless of whether the Snyder Cut is bad or good, if it's good, the fan base that really demanded the Snyder Cut is still gonna say that it was better than the movie, even if it's not. And I feel like that just justifies just the kind of like the bandwagon movement that people just want more Snyder. So even if it's bad, it just gives power to the wrong people. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it does. And see, my concern is that, as consumers, because movies are forms of art, right? Yes. And as fans and as the consumers of this art, we're allowed to interpret it, we're allowed to enjoy it, we're allowed to hate it. We're not allowed to dictate it. Like, no one, and this is going to be an extreme example, I'm going from one edge of the spectrum to the other, but no one's telling Leonardo DiCaprio, Leonardo da Vinci, that the Mona Lisa should be painted like this. No, you can interpret it however you want, but no one's going to tell him, you did it wrong, do it again. We're just supposed to take the art, interpret it, enjoy it or hate it, and that's it. But when we start dictating what is the true art that is being given.
You're responsible, Liam? What do you think the Snyder Cut will cause in the future?
This just reminds me of when Star Wars, the sequels came out, and I think it was The Force Awakens, or the one after that, where Mark Hamill says that, Hamill, he says, like, that's not my Luke. And when he said that, a huge outrage with the fans brought up. And that's what I'm feeling like this is what Zack Snyder's going to do, is that it's going to create a huge outrage, like Joss Whedon ruined Zack Snyder's film. And so if Zack Snyder's film comes out better, it's just going to create, like, a chaos through the fans.
However, even if it's bad, and the fan base accept it as better than Joss Whedon, it leaves a bad mark on Joss Whedon, even though it shouldn't have.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just the internet's really toxic, and this is just kind of the result of it.
So I want Zack Snyder's film to be great, but yet again, like, we weren't supposed to have it at all.
It's just, I don't know, it's interesting to me that this is happening because of the, specifically for a DC film, because Age of Ultron, the product that we got was not Joss Whedon's original idea. He had something completely different in mind, and Disney forced him to implement all these different aspects into his movie in order to set up the next phases of the MCU. So, where's the Whedon cut? Why aren't we petitioning that?
Well, because the Whedon cut wouldn't fit in with the MCU. I mean, it would fit in, but the goal of Age of Ultron Disney's eyes.
Well, at this point, it's too late. I think, and that's another thing I wanted to add. I think another reason why we're getting the Snyder Cut is because I think we can all agree the DCEU is practically dead.
Yeah, because even if Zack Snyder's Justice League does do well, I still think you can't continue without Ben Affleck as Batman or Henry Cavill as Superman.
Yeah, and then plus, where are we going from here? I mean, Birds of Prey just came out, and
Terrible.
it has nothing to do with the other movies at all. So, like, what's the story here? What's it building?
So it pretty much what it is. It's either Zack Snyder's DCEU or the standalone DCEU. None of the movies that are directed by Zack Snyder has any correlation with each other. It's all the movies that correlate. Zack Snyder's pretty much is in control of it. That's why when the movies are going to start coming out without Zack Snyder, and they won't have the same interpretations, the same direction that Zack Snyder's films have.
So pretty much we're kind of doomed because Zack Snyder had a big hand in developing Superman and Batman in that Batman vs Superman. So now pretty much the rest of the movie series, they either have to reboot again, or they have to just find a way to just drift away from Zack Snyder, like naturally though. Because if you try to force it, you end up with Justice League. You end up with Justice League. And that's the bad. Like that's why they kind of ran themselves into a corner. Like you said earlier, Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman, 3 of the biggest names, and you give 2 of those names to one guy who just makes a death tone, super serious movie. What are you gonna do with the rest of your series?
True. Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring this up, Alexis, because you're a big DC fan, right?
Yes.
So, and I think based on this conversation, it's safe to say that Zack Snyder hasn't handled these characters in the best way, given the track record of Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman.
Okay, real quick, I really enjoy Man of Steel. I understand it. I understand its flaws, but I enjoy the movie. I love the movie.
Okay. No, and honestly, I do too. And I'm not just saying that right now to agree with you. I actually do too. I think it's one of the better DCEU films.
It is.
It really is. But still, I guess given the track record it has with critics and other fans, he hasn't been handling this very well. So, and I'm more of a Marvel person, so I'm biased. So that's why I'm asking you this question specifically, because you lean more towards DC. Do you have faith in the Snyder Cut? Or, like, what do you think? Do you think it's going to end up being better than what we got theatrically? Or do you think it's going to be worse or somewhat the same?
Honestly, I don't like to make assumptions. I mean, when I watching these movies before, I was mainly a comic person. Then I started watching these movies and I made assumptions. Those assumptions kept me away from Guardians of the Galaxy, kept me away from Thor, kept me away from Captain America. I got rid of those assumptions, and I watched all of those movies, and I loved them. So I just hope that this cut will be good, but I fear for the consequences it's going to have on the fan base. Because people are, honestly, right now, people are just really toxic, and I feel like they're just going to cause a drift with the Zack Snyder fans and the DC series.
I agree. I think that's my main concern too, because I know that throughout this episode, my thoughts, opinions, and feelings seem kind of mixed. Like I kind of contradict myself here. Like I'll say, "Oh, I'm looking forward to it," and then I'll say, "Oh, but it's unnecessary." And then I'll say, "Oh, but it looks cool," and then, "Oh, but they shouldn't do it." And I think the reason why I feel that mixture is because I'm all for getting a good movie. I'm all for it. Like, why am I going to deny a good movie? But at the same time, I think to myself of the consequences that it could have, and that's when I start to back up and think, is this the best decision? Like, for example, if Snyder Cut does well on HBO Max, what's to stop Disney Plus from trying to release an animated version of Colin Trevorrow's Rise of Skywalker, which his versions would be called Duel of the Fates? Or like to have Garrett Edwards release the original Rogue One, because Rogue One was 75% reshot after Disney intervened.
But I don't mind that. Because I love the Rogue One that we got.
Oh, yes, it was fabulous. I love that Rogue One, too. Yes.
Yeah, I loved Rogue One. Rogue One is actually my favorite Star Wars film. And I, wait, what was that?
Phantom Menace is mine.
Oh, dude, yeah, Phantom Menace is awesome too. I love all Star Wars, and I guess when we're talking favorites, it's just in terms of preference because I think they're all great.
We're like the only people in this world who like Phantom Menace.
Yeah, there's probably one more person.
Maybe one more.
Fantastic. People dog on Jar Jar Binks so damn hard. It's like it's a CGI character. It's supposed to be clumsy. He's supposed to be comic release, but nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted Jar Jar Binks, and to be honest, it could have been the biggest twist and the biggest jaw dropper if he ended up being Darth Plagueis.
I believe that theory.
We're getting into theories, though. We're getting into theories.
You know what? That's its own episode that we should have next time, though.
Darth Jar Jar.
Because you know what?
Darth
Okay,
Jar Jar is the hype.
I know that this is not what this episode is about. But if you guys are willing to come back for another episode, I got a ton of theories and my own evidence as to why Darth Jar Jar was supposed to be real.
I'm the one that told you these theories.
Star Wars has a lot of amazing fans that create their own versions of Star Wars and their own theories. It's just, it is a good. Yeah, I would be open to it, to coming back for a Star Wars episode.
All right, that's great to
I
hear.
believe we talked a little bit the other. Okay, we're getting off topic, but we did talk about Star Wars the other day. It was a good talk, also. Me and you, Steven.
Yeah.
Yeah, but back to the Snyder cut. I think before I didn't know, like when I was in high school or when I was like 15 or something. But the studio does sometimes play a big cut in what kind of movie is finally released.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the biggest when I started reading more on it was the Sam Raimi interviews. Spider-Man 1 and 2 was so loved, and then everyone hated Spider-Man 3, and the studio had pressured Sam Raimi to throw in Venom or Sandman.
Yeah, I believe it was Venom.
Yeah. And it was the main villain was supposed to be Sandman, but for some reason the studio wanted to advertise toys of Venom too, so they made him throw Venom in it too.
And the Hobgoblin.
So, and that's the thing. Like, everyone hates Josh Whedon, or people hate Zack Snyder. They hate these directors, but honestly, sometimes these studios just give you such an impossible way to interpret the movie, and it just limits the directors. Like you said earlier, movies are arts, the way they see the movies, and these studios just come in and, well, I don't like your art, so now this director has to make something that's not in his niche.
That's true. You know, I didn't think about it until right now, because we're talking about the consequences of the Snyder Cut being negative, but the positive outcome of it could be, what if the Snyder Cut is the first movement in movie studios backing off and just letting directors do their thing?
Yeah.
I think the worst outcome would be that the Snyder Cut is just generally a bad film, but people just wanted it so bad they just believe it's a good one, and it'll push DC into a corner where they either get Zack Snyder back and let the chaos like just slow her down a little bit, or they decide not to get Zack Snyder again for another major film. And it is a bad corner to be in for the DCU. It's just unfortunate.
Okay, let me present this question. So let's say they asked you for some reason, and you're the last person. They're like, "We're gonna release the Snyder Cut," and you're one of the higher ups at Warner Brothers. The choice is yours. Would you say, you know what, release it on HBO Max next year, 2021, it's all good? Or would you say, you know what, this might put, like you said, the DCEU in a bad spot, or it's not just, we just can't release it?
Wait, is this a question for me?
It's for the whole group. So whoever wants to answer first.
Can I answer?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, wait, just to specify in your question.
Yes.
I'm the head executive of Warner Brothers, and I have the final say.
Yes, they come up to you. They're like, "We have this awesome idea. We're gonna release the Snyder Cut to HBO Max 2021." What do you say, Steven?
Okay, here's my thing. I would say no, not in 2021. What I would say is put all your efforts into writing a really, really, really good Flashpoint film. And Days of Future Past this whole DCEU. You know, do something where you just erase it all. After that Flashpoint movie, start fresh. We'll release the Snyder Cut on the 10th anniversary Blu-ray of Justice League.
That does not sound like a bad idea, actually. Because the Flashpoint can just reset everything.
Anyone from Warner Brothers who's listening, I can provide my email after this episode.
So yeah, what do you guys have to think, Alexis and Will?
If I was a CEO, I would not really say. I'd do something different. Also, just I would make a strong story, and just kind of treat it like just build up to a big movie. And once we make like let's say I make like standalone Flash movies, Wonder Woman movies, Aquaman movies, Superman movies. We build up the characters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we end it with a Darkseid fight, or like a Darkseid movie, or the gods, when the gods want to fight Superman, or Injustice, anything like that. You make a big movie and you add the Zack cuts in the director's cut. You just take little cuts from every little movie that you've made and make it into a big collage, so people won't be able to be like, oh wow, look, Zack Snyder's version is so much better than anything else. No, because there'll be different cuts of different directors, so it's not a huge highlight of how Zack Snyder would have handled the film.
So you mentioned something like Injustice, like that would be like the thing they lead up to. Would you think they would be bold enough to do that, where you have such graphic scenes like Superman killing Joker, or like Superman killing, I believe it's Robin?
So I'm okay with them keeping it PG because they're movies.
Yes.
Right now, the animated DC films are insanely graphic. So I am fed on graphic imagery from DC, because that Dark Apocalypse movie, I don't know if you guys have seen it. It is absolutely fantastic.
DC should, at this point, should just focus on their animated films.
No, I think they need to get the writers of their animated films to make the live action film.
Wouldn't that make the universe...
The animated film is not where the money is.
And that's the unfortunate thing. The animated films don't get a lot of attention.
Yeah.
I think if you were, like you said though, Steven, if you were to get a universe so big like they do in the animated universe into film, would it translate well, or would it just be too much? Like, it's just too big of a
No,
world.
it's not too big. I think, and again, sorry for the comparisons, but I think Marvel proved that you can literally have 20 plus essential characters in one film and have it work.
Okay, so when we talk about this, I think of a show called Earth's Mightiest Heroes, which is a show about the Avengers. And that first season, it's animated, just to be clear. That first season I thought was amazing, because it's just about the core, I want to say 6 or 8 Avengers, and it's beautiful. And then I got excited to see the second season, but they just tried expanding way too much. They threw the Young Avengers in there. They threw the X-Men and Fantastic Four in like very few little time, and you couldn't divide the time equally, and it just felt very odd.
Which is why, okay, so, but what you're comparing here is an animated show that's main focus is meant to be the Avengers.
Yes.
That's why the MCU is treating their universe through a multitude of movies. And that's why I feel it connects so well, because they're able to get Ant-Man, who wasn't in the first Avengers, give him a solo film, and then reference other Avengers who were in the first one, and have them all coexist. So when they do come together, you kind of have the sense of their importance, in the sense of, oh, they're a major character or they're a side character. So that's why, for example, in Infinity War, no one really complained that there wasn't enough Bucky. I feel like even though it was a little bit, everyone got the right amount of Bucky because they expected him to be a side character, because in other movies that's how they built him up as.
However, Infinity War, the main character, my opinion, is Thanos.
I agree.
Thanos is the main character in Infinity War.
Totally, yeah.
He has the most times. Like, he's just great.
Yeah, Thanos is the main character, and all the other Avengers are basically the villains. It's like they took the no, yeah, they took like the superhero storyline formula, but they just switched it, I feel.
See, I was gonna bring up like how you said comparisons, because Marvel's doing pretty much what DC wants to do also. So with the Snyder cut, let's go back to Iron Man 3. Iron Man 3 wasn't a well-received movie when it first came out. Iron Man 2, Iron Man 1, they're great. Iron Man 3 was not. If Iron Man 3, while it was being filmed, had a switch in directors just like Justice League, and there is an outrage for it, do you think after they had made Infinity War, if they released the cut of Iron Man 3, it would have had a big impact?
Ooh, Okay. I don't think they would even think about releasing, like, yeah, I can't.
Yeah, I think it would have a big impact, but not in a positive way, because the MCU has multiple films that have to do with, that coexist with each other and are leading up to something. So it's a very linear storyline where if you were to release something later, it could mess up that continuity. Where that's why I said with the DCEU, I think it's okay to do that because what's the direction right now? What's the story? They don't even know right now.
I say instantly release that side of the film if the main antagonist was the real Mandarin and not the joke one. And if that's the case, I instantly would have been okay with it because they butchered the Mandarin. But that's just me being a biased.
They did, and you know what? We don't even have to use MCU comparisons. I'm gonna bring a movie that's non MCU, but had a similar situation to what happened to Justice League. Yet no one is asking for this cut or this director to come back and step in. Have you guys seen Bohemian Rhapsody?
Yes.
Okay, so Bohemian Rhapsody went through like three different directors.
Yes.
Yet no one is asking for the original director's opinion or idea on it.
Because the one that was released kind of dominated. It did fantastic.
It did. Well, it's kind of hated. It got mixed reviews. Like there's a large amount of people that love it and a huge amount of people that hate it, which I think is the same. It's fair to say the same with Justice League.
I'd have to disagree because Bohemian Rhapsody is based on Queen, but there's no foundation. Like the story is kind of just up in the air. With Justice League, I mean, you have the storyline. You really can just copy and paste and just add your directing flow to it, and it'll be a good movie. But it's just a different. I think the amount of history that the films have and their fan base and the dissatisfaction, those three are the big reason why the Zack Snyder cut is getting so much attention. Because everyone loved Queen, but this Bohemian Rhapsody is just a movie. It's not going to make me hate Queen. It's not going to make me love Queen. It's just a movie about Queen. And Justice League, this is a movie that's going to branch into more movies. This is my entertainment. The media I consume is DC. So if it's bad, I'm going to be dissatisfied because it's going to continuously get bad. And it's just in the future, it's a dissatisfaction. Because there's so many DC fans out there that love when DC gets to the big screens and they're met with a slap in the face with terrible movies. And so I think that's why the Zack Snyder cut's getting so much attention and the Bohemian Rhapsody one is not really much of a big concern.
See, and focusing specifically on what you said about DC right now, I hate to be one of these people because I don't want people to target me as a Snyder hater, but I think Zack Snyder's the problem because Patty Jenkins took hold of Wonder Woman, and look, that movie was a fantastic success. They had a different director, I forgot his name, but the person who directed Shazam, fantastic movie. Well, I mean, critically, because I know that a lot of Shazam fans didn't like it, but critically, fantastic movie. Same thing with Aquaman. Aquaman is really, really loved, and James Wan was the director of that one. Yet the movies that Zack Snyder has filmed are the ones that critically seem to be demolished, and are the ones that fans have the strongest opinion on.
I mean, yeah, I agree, but people hold. I also find not trouble, I just can't believe that people believe that Zack Snyder's vision of Justice League is going to be so great when, like you said, his last two movies weren't well received.
Okay, critically, but if we're talking preference, yeah, Man of Steel wasn't bad.
I haven't seen it in a while. I can't speak for Man of Steel.
I think Steven said earlier the movie lacks a lot of backbone, but it can stand. And like a lot of the scenes, there's a lot of human scenes, but there's not a lot of Superman scenes. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like the whole movie is just him trying to understand himself on Earth, and then you have Superman at the end.
See,
And
go ahead.
it's tough because it is a good movie. It's really good, but it does have a lot of flaws in it, and I think people just focus on the flaws in that too much. But actually, go ahead. I was gonna bring up another point, but I'll save it in my mind right now.
Oh, I was just gonna say for listeners who are listening, for people who are listening, and you have your strong opinions about Man of Steel or Batman versus Superman, or Justice League, I challenge you to watch these movies again. And because here's one thing that I had to learn the hard way. Judging a movie based on its own integrity versus your own expectations are two very different things. If you're judging a movie based on expectations and it doesn't meet it, even if this movie is freaking brilliant, you're going to hate it because it didn't meet your own expectations. So I challenge listeners who are listening, I need to stop saying that, to rewatch these movies and let go of all your expectations and just take them in for what they are.
I agree with that because I feel like pretty much all of to bring back Star Wars, I'm sorry, I'm just going to mention this and then we'll get rid of that subject. If people were to watch The Phantom Menace and not expect to hate it, because that's what the media wants you to do. So you're watching the movie like, oh, that's terrible. You're being a lot more pickier when everyone should just enjoy the movie. That's why I think I enjoy The Phantom Menace, because I grew up in a household where it was loved. So naturally, I watched it and loved it.
Hello? Yeah, it says we're still on the call. Oh, no, but it doesn't have the time though, right? Yeah, it does. It's right there.
Oh, can you guys still hear us?
No, you guys cut out for a minute there.
Oh, wow. Okay. What did you hear?
The hate for Phantom Menace.
Oh, he just said hate for Phantom Menace that David doesn't understand it because he grew up in a household where it's loved.
So pretty much when you're going to watch a movie, just let go of all expectations of people loving it or hating it, and you determine yourself for what it is.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing I believe is that I think Justice League and Batman vs Superman, they weren't just competing with Marvel, they're competing with the Dark Knight. Because the Dark Knight, for some reason, the Dark Knight is just it's a comic book movie that's literally it's treated as like a movie that every decade has to know about because it's just so well directed, it's so well filmed. And how well do you think that DC films would be received if we didn't have the Dark Knight?
That's true. The Dark Knight is, I think, one of those movies that it's gonna be a classic even decades from now. Like children's children are going to be like, "Oh, the Dark Knight. That was back then. That was it. That was the shit."
And but then in return, also before the Dark Knight, we had Batman Forever, the one with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Dr. Freeze. Yeah. Yes. Like, that movie was so horrible. It was so bad. Is the Dark Knight that well received because the Batman movie previous to it was just so bad?
I don't think so. I think The Dark Knight is just genuinely a great movie. Like, without it having to be compared to anything, I think it lived up to the hype on its own merit.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Christopher Nolan killed it.
Yeah,
Christopher Nolan did a good job. I mean, but a lot of it has to go to Heath Ledger too. Rest in peace. But
yeah.
The characters in that film were great.
Dude, the whole cast did a great job in that movie.
Great. How do you feel about Maggie Gyllenhaal replacing?
I hate her. I'm a Katie Holmes fan. I think she's cute. I was not pleased, but I'll still rewatch Dark Knight over and over again.
Oh yeah, totally. At least once a year, at least.
All right. So, go ahead.
So with the Snyder Cut now coming out, DC pretty much right now, I mean, they have the bar pretty low on it, and it's really sad. But I think this is a good opportunity. You can make a decent movie and build from there. You don't even have to make a great movie because the bar is just set so low with Justice League that you can make just a decent movie and just build from there. and I'm afraid that they're just gonna try to make a great movie,
Yeah.
and it doesn't work like that.
You have to start small, like you were saying, with just a decent movie, because from there you can't build up to anything. Like, sort of like with music, if you start with a crescendo, like, really really loud note, you can't go louder. But if you start soft, the audience will hear and listen to it gradually getting louder, and when the beat drops, and yeah. That was
Well
a
said,
bit-
Stephen. Well said.
Yeah, that was a weird analogy, but I hope you guys understood what I meant.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, anyway, so David, why don't you give your final thought? Let's roll this into our final thoughts. We're each going to give our final thoughts, and then we'll sign out before we run out of time here.
All right, yeah. So the Snyder Cut, I am personally excited to see it. It's gonna be Zack Snyder's original vision. Now, I'm not gonna say it's good when it probably is most likely going to be bad, but I'm excited to see the direction it goes. What this means for the future of DCEU and just all films that just don't do well. Yeah, those are my final thoughts.
It's great thoughts into that.
Thank you. I do have great
Will and Alexis, do you have your final thoughts?
I think the Snyder Cut is probably going to be fantastic. We're probably going to get another Man of Steel. I love Man of Steel. If we get another one of those, I'm 100% for it.
All right.
My final thoughts. I just hope the Snyder Cut does well, so we'll keep getting more DC movies, good ones, not problem DC films. So we're just looking forward to the DC Snyder Cut.
Yeah, for sure.
It's fantastic. My feelings are still mixed. It's gonna sound like I'm contradicting myself, but that's because I am on the fence on this, because I do think it's unnecessary. I don't think it should be released, but I'm not gonna try to stop it, and I probably will watch it. So that's where I stand. I'm like, don't release it, but if you do, I'm there. So that's where I stand. And with that said, that was our episode. So for you listeners out there, what are your thoughts on the Snyder Cut? Any opinions on where the DCEU should go? What do you want to see in the Snyder Cut? Leave all your thoughts down below in the comments. Let us know if you wanted to hear specifically more opinions on any specific thing that we mentioned regarding Star Wars or the Snyder Cut, DC, Marvel. Let us know in the comments if you have any questions. And with that said, I'm the host of the Movie Buffs Podcast, Steven. This is my co-host, David.
Thank you
Signing
for having
off.
us, Steven.
Thank you to having us and allowing me to bring Alexis with me.
Yeah, of course. You guys are invited to come back whenever you guys want. Just let us know. I'll give you a heads up on what topics we'll be talking about, and we'll get together and do. I do want to do a Darth Jar Jar one with you guys soon.
Yeah, buddy. Darth Jar Jar. Hell yeah. Let's go.
I think that would be fantastic. So, anyway, everyone, please remember the pandemic is not over. So stay safe, wash your hands, don't touch your face, so we can all go back to normal and hopefully see the movies we're talking about, or hoping, like Flashpoint or the future of the DCU in theaters and not on HBO Max. With that said, until next time.